All right, my beautiful people. Thanks so much for tuning in. I am back here. Give me just 1 second. 1 second. All right. All right. So we are back here going through our. We started yesterday with a series to go through the movement for Black Lives, and so we went through the platform yesterday. We went through what they were about, and today we're going to be going through. Today we're going to be going through, starting to go through some of their principles and some of the things, some of their demands. So give me just a second. I'll get set up, trying to see if anybody joins our live stream here. If not, that's fine. I'm really going to be going through this on my own here. So we're really just trying to dig into this story here, just to see if it's something that we can get behind. So I think it's very important that we do that because we have Black Lives Matter, which many of us didn't do any research before we just started getting behind them. And so I figured it would be good for us to figure out or to find out what's going on with the movement for Black Lives. Let me go ahead and share my screen here, and we'll go into this. All right, so the movement for Black Lives, guys. Again, yesterday, if you didn't catch us yesterday, you can check out the video from yesterday. We went over the About Us and also the platform. So this is a movement for Black Lives. This is something that's been, they started about a year ago, and they now have a platform, and they have a vision for Black Lives, policy demands for Black power, freedom, and justice. Yesterday, I found out that, really looking at something that's been structured. It has some good infrastructure. They probably need a lot more help in order to make this thing go. But at least they have some things in place. And so we want to dive into what this is all about, just to see if it's something that we can get behind. We want to do our research in the beginning before we do like we did with Black Lives Matter and just jump on board or something and not know what they stand for. So we're going to be going through the demands. So today we'll go through End the War on Black People. So this demand is, we demand an end to the named and unnamed wars on Black people, including the criminalization, incarceration, and killing of our people. So criminalization, that's what you see with the blue lives, or sending people to jail or giving them fines or whatever the case may be. Giving them misdemeanors and felonies. Incarceration, of course, is the prisoner pipeline, agenda that's out, that we see sending more and more of our Black men and our Black portions of our family to jail for long periods of time, longer periods of time than their white counterparts for drug offenses. We also, matter of fact, today, the president, Barack Obama, went through his commemorations, or what do they call it, when he let people out of jail. So he let out a record 214 today. I'm not quite sure how many of them were African Americans, but he let out those small drug offenses. He let them out of jail today. So it was the highest release of prisoners in history. And then we had a killing of our people. So of course, blue lives killing Black lives, cops killing Black people. We continue to see it, almost weekly at this point. So let's get into this End the War on Black People demand. This is a demand, and this is what the demand says. And of course, I want you guys to chime in with your comments, how you feel about this, what you think as it relates to what we'll go over today. So we demand an end to war against Black people. Since this country's inception, there have been named and unnamed wars on our communities. We demand an end to the criminalization, incarceration, and killing of our people. This includes an immediate end to the criminalization and dehumanization of Black youth across all areas of society, including but not limited to our nation's justice and educational systems, social service agencies, and media and pop culture. This includes an end to zero-tolerance school policies and arrest of students, the removal of police from schools, and a reallocation of funds from police and punitive school discipline practices to restorative services. So I actually like this because we're going to reallocate funds and stop paying the police overtime to come and police our schools. That is not working, but put in programs that's going to actually empower our kids. I think that is a better way to go. And of course, now I wonder what they mean by criminalization in media and pop culture. Maybe it's the images that they show. We don't get any, any positive images of Black people on TV or in the media or pop culture. So maybe that's what they mean. But I like that one. That's pretty cool. Number 2, an end to capital punishment. Now, all of these have little highlights, and if I go into all the highlights, it's going to be way too long. So if you guys want to come and look at this and read it on your own, you always can come back and figure out what all this stuff means. An end to Moneyball, mandatory fines, fees, court surcharges, and defendant-funded court proceedings. They want to demand an end to the use of past criminal history to determine eligibility for housing, education, licenses, voting, loans, employment, and other services in need. Oh, I like that. Number 5, demand an end to war on black immigrants, including the repeal of the 1996 crime and immigration bills and the end of all deportations, immigrant detention, and immigration and custom enforcement, ICE or ICE raids, and mandated legal representation in immigration court. Number 6, an end to the war on black, trans, queer, and gender nonconforming people, including their addition to anti-discrimination civil rights protections to ensure they have full access to employment, health, housing, and education. They demand an end to the mass surveillance of black communities. Oh, I like this. And the end of the use of technologies that criminalize and target our communities, including IMSI catchers, drones, body cameras, and predictive policing software. Number 8, demand the militarization of law enforcement, including law enforcement in schools and on college campuses. Demand an immediate end to the privatization of police, prisons, jails, probation, parole, food, phone, and all other criminal justice-related services. Number 10, we demand our 10th demand is until we achieve a world where cages are no longer used against our people, we demand an immediate change in conditions and an end to public jails, detention centers, youth facilities, and prisons as we know them. This includes the end of solitary confinement, the end of shackling of pregnant people, access to quality health care, and effective measures to address the needs of our youth, queer, gender, nonconforming, and trans families. So this is an immediate end to the criminalization and dehumanization of black youth across all areas of society, including but not limited to our nation's justice and educational systems, social services agencies, media, and pop culture. So what is the problem, guys? Well, the problem is across the country, black children attend under-resourced schools. I agree with that, but they are often pushed off as an academic track onto a track to prison, the prisoner pipeline. Zero tolerance policies, a combination of exclusionary disciplinary policies and school-based arrests, are often the first stop along the school to prison pipeline and play a key role in pushing students out of the school system and funneling them into jails and prisons. Hey, I don't know about you guys. Y'all didn't leave no comments. It seems like this agenda is serious. What's the next problem? Each year, more than 3 million students are suspended from school, often for vague and subjective infractions such as willful defiance and disrespect, amounting to countless hours of lost instructional time. As a result, black students are denied an opportunity to learn and punished for routine child and adolescent behaviors that their white peers are often not disciplined for at all. Well, this is a problem. For black youth, the impact of exclusionary school discipline is far-reaching, disengaging them from the academic and developmental opportunities, increasing the likelihood that they will be incarcerated later in life. In addition, current research emphasizes the need to examine the unique ways in which black girls are impacted by punitive zero-tolerance policies. There are higher disciplinary disparities between black girls and white girls and disciplinary disparities between black boys and white boys. Yet black girls have historically been overlooked in the national discourse around youth impacted by the school to prison pipeline. Black youth are also more likely to experience higher rates of corporal punishment. According to the Office of Civil Rights and the United States Department of Education, black students constitute 17.1% of the nationwide student population, but 35.6% of those paddled. In addition, while girls are paddled less than boys, black girls are more than twice as likely to be paddled than white girls. In the 13 states that paddle more than 1,000 students per year, black girls are 2.07 times as likely as white girls to be beaten. Outside of schools, young black people are criminalized in ways that limit their life chances at every point. 2010 data shows that while black youth comprise 70% of all youth, they represent 31% of all arrests. These disparities persist even as juvenile crime rates have fallen. Among youth arrests, young black people are more likely to be referred to a juvenile court than their white peers and are more likely to be processed and less likely to be diverted. Among those agitated delinquent, They are more likely to be sent to solitary confinement. Among those detained, Black youth are more likely to be transferred to adult facilities. The disparities grow at an almost every step, stealing the dignity of young Black people and forcing them onto lifelong pathways of criminalization and diminished opportunity. For Black girls, the United States failure to address gender-based violence, which they experience at greater levels than any other group, is paramount to the criminalization they experience. In fact, sexual abuse is one of the primary predictors of girls' entry into the juvenile justice system. With girls often being routed to the system specifically because of their victimization. For instance, girls who are victims of sex trafficking are often arrested on prostitution charges. The punitive nature of this system is ill-equipped to support young girls through the violence and trauma they've experienced, which further subjects them to sexual victimization of a lifelong path of criminalization and abuse. What else is a problem? There's a critical need for a coordinated strategy in local communities that address rampant racial disparities in the application of zero-tolerance policies and criminalization practices that impact Black boys and girls. Fortunately, a powerful grassroots movement led primarily by youth and parents of color has taken shape across the country to address these harmful policies, but much more work remains. What else is a problem? Tens of thousands of youth under the age of 21 are currently incarcerated for offenses ranging from truancy to more serious charges. Every crime bill passed by Congress throughout the 1980s and 1990s included new federal laws against juvenile crimes and increased penalties against children. Similar trends can be seen throughout state legislation. There is mounting research that children under the age of 23 do not have fully developed brains, and that the cheapest, most humane, and most cost-effective way to respond to juvenile crime is not incarceration, but programs and investments that strengthen families, increase stability, and provide access to educational and employment opportunities. Prosecuting youth with crimes is not only cruel, but is also permanently disadvantages them with a criminal record, which makes completing their education, getting a job, finding housing, and growing up to be contributing members of society unfairly difficult. So what does this solution do? So the solution is the demand. So here's the solution. Here's what it does. It advances a grassroots organizing strategy at the local and state level that centers the work of ending the criminalization of Black youth through a racial and gender justice framework led and informed by youth and parents. It addresses state-sanctioned violence that stems from over-policed schools and deprivation of resources to public schools. It opens resources for alternative practices like restorative justice as a way to train students, parents, and staff to deal with interpersonal conflict. Restorative justice practices are used as an alternative to zero-tolerance policies by helping to build stronger school communities through 1, developing effective leadership, 2, building trust, interconnection, and deeper relationship amongst students, parents, teachers, and staff, 3, providing methods to address misbehavior in a way that gets to the root cause of conflicts and holds individuals accountable, and 4, repairing harm in a way that maintains the integrity of the community and does further isolate offenders. And what else does this solution do? By ending the practice of charging youth with misdemeanors and limiting the ability to charge them with felonies, we would save hundreds of millions of dollars annually and provide the opportunity for our children to outlive their mistakes. Hey, I don't know about you guys, but this is sounding pretty all right here. Now I'm wondering how they're going to actually put this into place. So from a federal standpoint, they target the U.S. Congress and federal agencies, the Office of Civil Rights, Department of Education, Department of Justice. The process, the potential for policy reforms to zero tolerance and punitive disciplinary practices at the federal level are somewhat limited. In December 2015, the United States Senate approved the most recent iteration of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, also known as No Child Left Behind. I know you guys probably remember that. The new law reduces the role of the federal government in education matters and leaves in place punitive high-stake testing requirements that have been a force behind removing students from the classroom and closing schools in Black and brown communities, creating a test, punish, push-out effect. Probably want to talk to your teachers about this. However, there are opportunities to demand greater enforcement of civil rights violations, particularly within federal agencies responsible for enforcing claims of racial disparities involving the administration of school discipline. In January 2014, the Department of Education and the Department of Justice issued joint guidance outlining school districts' obligations to ensure the school discipline policies are not administered in a manner that fuels racial disparities. There is strong potential for additional guidance documents among these issues that can be used as a lever for local and statewide organizing efforts, although these documents lack the force to truly push real transformation in schools. So they're letting us know straight up that federal legislation is not the way to go, but they are giving us their ideas behind it. So the target is legislative. The process, this would require passage on the bill through both the Houses of Congress and signed by the president. The bill will repeal all federal juvenile crimes and amend the Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Act. It would also provide incentives to states, including the type of federal prison and policing grants, to adopt statutes that ban the prosecution of children under the age of 23. The bill would also include a mandatory reinvestment strategy where the federal and state savings would be captured and reinvested in programs shown to reduce juvenile crime, increase youth educational attainment, and support communities where youth incarceration has been most prevalent. I actually like this, guys. The reason why is because from a legislative process, they're not just going after black and brown people. They're trying to they would go after passing a bill or getting a bill up through Congress for all children, all youth children, which would have a better chance of it passing versus it just being something for black children, especially when you talk about from a federal level. Here's your state action. They would target the legislative process again. The process is the passage of state laws of banning exclusionary discipline, suspensions, expulsions, and arrests for all students pre-K through 12th grade. Man, that would be awesome. How would they be able to get that? So state law banning exclusionary discipline, suspensions, expulsions, arrests for vague and subjective behaviors, including willful defiance, disrespect, insubordination, obnoxious, and disturbing the peace. Okay, so they would target particular things that people get, expelled for, that are so vague you can't really define it. It's all depending on the person who's writing a report, just like police. All right, so the passage of state law prohibiting the use of corporal punishment in all educational settings, and a state law requiring the use of supportive services for students, including fully funded restorative programs and support for students in crisis educational settings. It improved the child's welfare system's identification of victims of abuse, implement a gender-responsive approach to victims of abuse, and use Medicaid funds to improve quality care and trauma-related services for girls in I think that's supposed to be girls in child welfare. So again, you guys leave your comments or what your thoughts are. This sounds like a very thought-out plan, or a target, a way to approach the legislative process with specific things that you want passed from a state law perspective. Sounds like they got some lawyers in the team, some attorneys in their team that's helping to write some of this stuff. And, obviously from a state to state perspective, I would imagine they need help in each one of these states in order for somebody to push the agenda forward. I'm not quite sure where if every state is represented, but I think it's important, again, to at least go through this and see what they're all about so you can make your own decision on whether you want to join, you want to partner, you want to help, you want to sponsor, you want to be a part of this movement that they've brought forth. So the next target is legislative. The process, this will require passage of a bill through the state legislature. The bill would repeal all existing juvenile offenses. Oh, wow. And would also include a mandatory reinvestment strategy where state savings would be captured and reinvested in programs shown to reduce juvenile crime, increase youth educational attainment, and support communities where juvenile incarceration has been most prevalent. So instead of the money just going to anything that they choose, they would have to prove that they've been successful in reducing crime or increasing youth educational attainment. So that means that those organizations would have to have great data behind them. So that's the state level. And here's the local level. So local action. Passes the school district policy banning exclusionary discipline. Again, suspensions, expulsions, and arrests for all students pre-K through 12th grade. The passage of local school district policy banning exclusionary discipline for vague and subjective behaviors, including willful defiance, disrespect, insubordination, obnoxious, and disturbing the peace. Passage of local school district policy prohibiting the use of corporal punishment in all educational settings. I can't believe that they still have corporal punishment in educational settings, but I guess they do somewhere in the country. Passage of local school district policy requiring the use of supportive services for students, including fully funding restorative programs and support for students in crisis in educational settings. To invest in creating safe and supportive group homes with specialized services for teenage girls. Invest in training for students, parents, teachers, and staff on restorative justice practices as an alternative to zero tolerance policies. Process at the local level. Reducing the prosecution of juvenile misdemeanors can be accomplished in a variety of ways. Campaigns that target city and county prosecutors and demand that instead of prosecution, youth defendants are diverted to non-punitive programs. Campaigns that target police, who often have wide discretion in the arrest of misdemeanors, to publicly deprioritize the arrest of youth for misdemeanors. So the process on a local level will be campaigns that target the police and target city and county prosecutors. Now, how does this solution address the specific needs to some of the most marginalized Black people? The solution addresses exclusionary and overly punitive school discipline policies in public schools across the nation that deny Black youth an opportunity to learn. These policies have the greatest impact on queer and trans youth, foster care youth, and girls. The solution will propel Black youth towards graduation and create a school-to-college pipeline instead of a school-to-prison pipeline. Now, I will say this right here, the policies have great impact on queer and trans youth, foster care youth, and girls. Again, it sounded like they're keeping out the boys. I don't know. That's a little suspicious to me, because they specifically say girls, but I don't see anything about the boys. As if, I know we talked about between white boys and Black boys up top, but it seems like they're really pushing. And I don't know the stats on how much of a disparity Black girls have versus Black boys, but it seems that Black females seem to get along a little bit further, and I'm not gonna say easier than Black boys, but when we talk about school to college pipeline, it's a lot of guys, a lot of Black boys are being locked up in jail. So let's see what they mean. So students will not have minor offenses on their academic records. So they're talking about all students, which is good, but I just found that interesting that this impact on queer, trans youth, foster care youth, and girls. They're specifically pointing out girls instead of just saying youth. If they kept that as youth, I'd be like, okay, all youth. But they're specifically want to target the girls. So if you're a girl, you would be able to let me know if it's something I'm missing. So legislation banning the prosecution of youth for all misdemeanors would have the largest impact on people who are made most vulnerable by incarceration, including LGBTQ, undocumented, and trans people. It would also reduce the number of incarcerated people significantly. The reinvestment aspect of the legislation would positively impact homeless people by providing increased services. So I like that as well. And so they have some model legislation here, School of Disciplinary Policy, Trayvon's Law. If you click this, it takes you somewhere. It's Trayvon's Law. You can kind of read up on that. I don't want to, take too much time here. They got resources here on things that work. Black Girls Matter, Push Out, the Sexual Assault Prison Pipeline. They've got resources backing up what they're talking about. Organizations currently working on policy. So if you're interested, they provide some organizations that you might want to be a part of if you want to be a part of this change. Advancement Project, Alliance of Educational Justice, Dignity in Schools Campaign, Genders and Sexualities Alliance Network, NAACP Legal Defense Fund. This is the same defense fund that Michael Jordan donated $1 million to. On the local level, if you happen to be in any one of these areas, you got a local in New York, Alliance for Quality Education, Baltimore Algebra Project in Baltimore, Boston Youth Organizing Project in Boston, Community Justice Project in Miami, Critical Exposure, District of Columbia, DeSoto County Parents and Students of Justice, Mississippi, Dream Defenders, Florida, Desist, Rising Up and Moving in New York, Families and Friends of Louisiana's Incarcerated Children in New Orleans, Girls for Gender Equality in New York, Labor Community Strategy Center in Los Angeles, Noel Jenkins Family Center in Mississippi, One Voice in Mississippi, Padres y Joventus Unidos in Denver, Philadelphia Student Union in Philly, Power Youth Center for Social Change in Miami, Portland Parents Union, Portland, Project South in Atlanta. I'm in Atlanta. I might check that out, see what they're talking about. Racial Justice Now in Ohio, Rethink in New Orleans, Spirit House in North Carolina, Tenants of Workers United in Virginia, Tunica Teens in Action in Mississippi, Urban Youth Collaborative in New York, Voices of Youth in Chicago Education, Chicago, Youth Justice Coalition, Los Angeles, Youth United for Change in Philly, your local NAACP branches, and many others. You got to click here if you want to find out in your local area what organizations are working on this or working in this area or working on this policy, and it might be a way for you to get involved if you want to get involved. So then they provide the authors of this, contributors to this policy overview. In case you want to look any of them up, Thena Robinson Mock, Educational Law Center, Ruth Janelle, Power Use of Social Change, Rachel Gilmore, Dream Defenders, Chelsea Fuller, and Mayberry Thayer Butts. So they have people working all these different nonprofit or organizations that are coming together to put forth this movement for Black Lives. About 50 different organizations. They're utilizing everyone's talents to write the policy out and push forth the agenda. They're providing an opportunity for people to get involved because they can't do it alone, but they have got the ball rolling. So if it sounds like something that you're interested in, get involved. So what's the problem? Well, 31 states, the federal government and the United States military have the death penalty. 19 states do not. 7 states, New York, New Jersey, New Mexico, Connecticut, Illinois, Maryland, and Nebraska have repealed the death. Oh, this is that's the next. Oh, so that's it. I'm done with that. I think that was it. I don't want to go into that was the next demand. I think that was the next demand. Was it? Maybe not. No, okay, I'll keep on reading. Maybe I thought that was it. So anyway, I think that was the next demand. Oh, I guess not. I thought that was the end of that. All right, so let's keep on reading. End to capital punishment. How long is this thing? End to money bail, mandatory fines, fees, court surcharges, defendant-funded court proceedings. Oh, I don't know if I want to read all this, guys. Woo! Oh, Lord, Jesus. How far is it? Oh, this is this is going to take a long time. Okay. I'm going to read one more, and then I'll pick it back up tomorrow. How about that? Yeah. I didn't realize that. So end to capital punishment. All right, what's the problem? We talked about that. I have repealed the death penalty the past decade. So we want to end, a demand is to end capital punishment. In the past decade, for the first time in the modern era, since reinstatement of the death penalty in the mid-1970s, public support of the death penalty is at its lowest. New death sentences and executions are decreasing every year. We must engage in pushing this racist practice into the annals of history where it belongs. The death penalty is morally repugnant. The death penalty in the United States was designed to bring lynching into the courtroom and has targeted blacks and other people of color and poor people throughout its history. The death penalty devalues Black lives. Statistically, those convicted of killing white people are at least 3 to 4 times more likely to be sentenced to death than killers of anyone else. The death penalty is also geographically discriminatory. About 1% of the U.S. counties produce more than half of the death sentences. Expensive, even more costly than life in prison without parole, and has resulted in innocent people being sentenced to death. 156 people in county are confirmed to date, and some even executed. It is randomly and arbitrarily sought by prosecutors who have the sole discretion to seek or not seek death. Upwards of 95% of whom are white. The death penalty requires a high level of counsel, skill, and resources not available to most defendants. We do not believe the death penalty was designed to be fair, nor can it be fairly applied. What does this solution do? Our policy goal is to abolish the death penalty. Repeal is often prospective, while abolition is comprehensive. Abolition is prospective and also removes individuals currently on death row in the state. State action, legislative and judicial. So here's where the target is going to be: legislative and judicial. In some states, the death penalty can be abolished through legislative advocacy, through the strategic efforts of coordinated coalitions accompanied by public education. In other states, the death penalty can be legislative and or judicially reformed to result in fewer new death sentences and less frequent executions. In some states, the courts are well positioned to declare the death penalty unconstitutional for a range of reasons, as legislature and courts in other states, particularly the former states of Confederacy, are unlikely to reform, repeal, or abolish the death penalty. The United States Supreme Court will have to declare the death penalty unconstitutional in order to impact the entire country. Local action, community education and action on behalf of people sentenced to death row prisoners, coordinated with their counsel, and public pressure on local and state politicians and officials, including Department of Corrections in states with the death penalty. Such education and advocacy is needed in order to amplify the unfairness and immorality of the death penalty and grow the national trend away from the practice. How does this solution address the specific needs of some of the most marginalized Black people? As a part of the marginalized and often poor communities, undocumented and LGBTQ people are overly represented among those targeted for extermination by the government through the death penalty. Additionally, many people on the death row have mental illnesses, cognitive limitations, severe trauma histories, and prior criminal records, often directly related to racial bias and poverty. and most women on death row are there in connection with the death of an abusive partner. Model legislation, depending on how death penalty laws are included in state statutes, repeal and abolition proposals must track the nuances. Each state death penalty coalition has developed repeal and abolition bills that are applicable to their state. You can always go to the Death Penalty Information Center for more resources. And here you have some organizations that are currently working on the policy. I'm going to skip going through the organizations working on the policy. I think you can read that on your own if you're interested. Tanya Green is a contributor. She's an attorney at law who wrote this up. And I'm actually going to stop there. So we're going to still be in the End the War on Black, End the War on Black People section. And we're going to just keep going through. So if you're feeling this so far, you're interested in learning more, of course, you can read on your own, but I'll be back to go through more of this platform. I think it's important that we do our due diligence and research what it is that's coming out to see if it's something that we want to be a part of, something we want to support, something we want to give our money to, something that we want to actually be put some feet to our action and be a part of this legislative judicial process and make a difference where we can. I will say this, from what I've read so far, it seems like they have their stuff together. They're telling you how it's going to, they give you the idea of what you can do from a legal standpoint. They're saying what they are with the action or the solution that they're providing, how it's addressing Black people or marginalized Black people. And so I'm pretty, I feel pretty good about what they presented thus far. But of course, we're going to continue to deep dive into the movement for Black lives. Again, you can go to this policy, mb4l.org, and find out more. It's a nonprofit organization, not a for-profit. Once we get to the end, we'll do some more back work and see who's funding it, try to find out who's funding this, see if it's liberals, see if it's all funded by these organizations. But that's all I got for you tonight, guys. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I think I've talked enough, read enough, but we can continue to go through this together and continue to research, find out more about the movement for Black lives, and see if it's something that's feasible for us to back and support as we continue to look for justice in all areas of life, economic, political, social, whatever other areas there are. Anyway, I'm Brother E, ERGJ, and we'll continue to pick this up tomorrow. You guys have a good night.